Hi, this is Leah Klein, Health and Wholeness Coach. And my question for you today is, are you thirsty? Our verse is Isaiah 44:3. For I will pour water on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground. I will pour my spirit upon your offspring and my blessing on your descendants. I wanted to talk a little bit about thirst today, both spiritual thirst, which is obviously what we're talking about in our verse, and physical thirst. Spiritual thirst first. As I brought up, last week, God is the only one that can satisfy us. We have cravings and desires in us that only He can fully fill. And this verse is kind of piggybacking on that same theme. It's also from Isaiah, and it's talking about God, being able to turn desert into, springs and, streams in dry ground. He is able to cause water to flow. I mean, this reminds me of the Israelites in the wilderness and, having water coming out of a rock. And, He can cause water to come from wherever He wants. And obviously this is a visual picture of that, but it's also a literal, He can quench the thirst that's inside of us. Only God can satisfy and fill us up from the inside out. We try to put things in to satisfy us, and it doesn't work. And the same is true of thirst. God is the one who plants that thirst in us, who gives us that desire, and it's a desire only He can quench with His Holy Spirit and time in His presence. Now let's go on to physical thirst. This is a area that honestly, I think most of us are dehydrated. Honestly, I am sometimes myself. I have to really focus on getting the water, making sure that I'm getting the water, because otherwise, if you're just drinking when you feel, oh, I'm feeling thirsty right at this moment, guess what? You were probably dehydrated by that point. And you needed it like an hour earlier. That's one part of that. The other part of it is lots of times we have dulled our senses in a way that we don't know the difference between being thirsty versus being hungry. So we will try to fill ourselves up with food, and actually we were thirsty. We needed water. We didn't need food. Can you tell the difference between those two? Because sometimes it isn't real obvious. And if you're so used to just putting food in, or putting, diet drinks or other sodas and things that aren't really water, they aren't going to quench. In fact, most of the other drinks, especially the less healthy ones, are designed to leave you craving more of that, not more of what you really need. So that's a whole side issue there. But we need water. We are 70 to 80% water in varying degrees through our body. Some parts are really, really high, some parts less so, like our bones. But most of our body is majority water. Now, it's not the same water. If you checked your body a year from now on the same part of your body, it wouldn't be the same water that's there now. the water has to be used, replaced. It's using it to flush toxins out of your cells and everything else. And so for your body to function, there has to be flow. That water has to be coming in and going out. And so that's a whole urinary tract, conversation as well. But yes, it has to be going out. But you need to be putting clean, pure water in order for that to happen. Now, there are varying guidelines on how much. I personally recommend half your body weight in ounces. So, if you're 130 pounds, that would be 65, would be half of that. And then that in ounces, then instead of, obviously pounds of water. So you want like 65 ounces of water. Now, there may be, if you get a really, really heavy, you may not need quite that much, but still, in order to flush toxins out, you do need to have the water coming in. Now, as far as quickly going into purity, I do strongly recommend distilled water. It is the gold standard, really, for having nothing left in the water but the water. Especially if you have post-carbon, filtration that's, grabbing any, residual stuff that was able to get boiled up, which is really rare. There's not a lot of stuff that can happen with. Most things do stay in the boiling chamber, and it's mimicking what God created. It's just like water evaporating, going up in the clouds, condensing back down. It's basically doing the exact same thing, but then doing it in such a way, obviously, that you're not going up to any contamination or anything. You're got a clean surface that you're condensing it back down through, and you have left all the minerals and purities and all that down in the bottom of the lake, pond, if you were using the nature analogy. And the water, provided the air is clean, then it's cleaner when it's coming down than when it went up, kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons I personally recommend that. There also is, while reverse osmosis can purify, the water, it wastes a lot of water in the process. So it will, I forget the exact numbers, but I mean, it will like waste 4 times as much water as it actually you end up with purified, depending on the way you're doing it. Different devices may have some fluctuation in how much that is. And then anything that is involving a filter, membrane, whatever, if it has to be replaced every so often, the closer you get to when that needs to be replaced, the less pure it is. And so that's one of the advantages. Distilled is the same constantly. It's always taking all of it out, and there isn't that fluctuation that those filters provide. So that's a little bit on thirst, physical thirst. So let God fill up your spiritual thirst, and the next time you feel hungry, stop and think, did I just eat? Has it not been that long since I ate? When was the last time I drank water? Try drinking water first before you try to fill yourself up with food. Lots of times you'll find out I was actually thirsty. It wasn't food that I needed at that moment. So ask God to show you where you might need to clean up, where you might need to focus more on Him and let Him fill you up, and where you might need to be drinking more and flushing more out of your system. Obviously, really good way to connect with God is to go on a personal retreat. And I do have a local one that's just for the day, basically, that's coming up on October 28th. If you happen to be in the neighborhood and do have an interest in that, feel free to reach out to me. Now, I want to wrap up our time with Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. I thought this song was appropriate because we're talking about God being the source, God being the unending fountain of blessing, provision, filling up our thirst, you name it. And so I felt this was really appropriate for talking about this particular thing. It reminds us that God is who can satisfy us. So if you know it, feel free to sing along. If not, just listen. Come, come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues of love. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of God's unchanging love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy grace now, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts of love. And just a little quick reminder, an Ebenezer is a memorial stone that was a reminder of God's past provisions and crossing the Jordan River, just for reference. So I will see you next week with another verse. See you then.